you're looking to dive into topics on how to live a happier, healthier, more fit, and long lifespan, then you've come to the right podcast. Livin the Dream with me, Coach Damian Evans. Together, we will explore the topics on all things health, fitness, and wellness. Together, we will be lifelong learners on this journey to living the ultimate dream.
What up, Dream Team? Coach D here, coming at you from beautiful sunny San Diego. And in today's episode, we will be moving on to the next pillar of total wellness, nutrition. Last week, we covered pillar number 1, movement. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, I recommend going back and listening to that first, as this was a presentation that I gave to a company and it had a certain order and flow to it. We're going to be breaking the topic of total wellness down into 4 important pillars. So the goal is to learn how important these big rocks are and how we can leverage them to improve our total wellness. I'll bring up what we covered in that presentation, but we're also going to go much deeper on each topic. Total wellness is a large subject, and 4 really important pillars to total wellness are movement, nutrition, stress management, and sleep. Today, we will touch on some of the struggles that we are currently seeing with the way that our society is consuming food. Then we will discuss strategies and tips on how to boost our nutrition pillar to optimal status. But before we get to the topic of the day, I want to start by thanking the sponsors of this podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Eat the Frog Fitness. Eat the Frog Fitness is the most personalized group fitness experience that you will ever find. All Frog Squad members are assessed every 8 weeks to see and track progress. The programming is backed by science-based periodization, which means that your sessions are designed to progress your intensity over time, as well as has programmed in recovery weeks. Check out Eat the Frog Fitness, any location in Southern California. If you mention the Livin the Dream podcast, you will receive your first 2 training sessions complimentary. Another one of our sponsors is the music app Brain.fm. Use Brain.fm's functional music to help you focus, relax, meditate, and sleep better, using cutting-edge neuroscience to get the results that you're after. I used Brain FM for years before I partnered with them, and I truly believe in their product. I use it anytime I'm creating an episode for this podcast. I also listen to their deep sleep music every single night. And my Aura Ring that tracks my sleep data, it tells me that it is a noticeable difference. Download the app on your app store and use the discount code CoachDamian_SD to try this app for a free month and discount off of your first month if you decide to continue on with your subscription. And this week's 5-star review comes from Marissa Marie 24. Marissa Marie 24 says, "Every episode offers information that is life-changing. I wish I would have had this in my life when I was younger. Proud to be a part of the Livin the Dream team." Thank you so much, Marissa Marie. We're proud to have you as part of the Livin the Dream team. Thank you so much for your support and kind words. If the rest of you would do me a favor, if you haven't already, while you're listening to this episode, if you haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to subscribe to this podcast, which will allow you to get notifications anytime I release an episode. But it also shows more people that this podcast is worth a listen to them. Then you can scroll down and leave me a 5-star review if you feel that we've earned it. I read every single one and appreciate the love and feedback. And now on to the topic of the day. Nutrition. The process of eating is one of the most magical things that we can experience as human beings. Think about it. We take stuff from the outside world and we put that stuff into our bodies, where our digestive system breaks the food down, and that food then becomes us. When I look at you, when I look and I see your face, I see the protein that you have eaten, and I see how your body broke it down into all these small amino acid building blocks, and somehow your body told those building blocks where to go and what to become. Dang, you have some beautiful protein. Humans used to have a problem with not enough food. That is no longer an issue. You can get almost any food you want any time of day with a quick order off of an Uber Eats app or a quick trip out of the house to the restaurant or store down the road. We have some of the smartest people in the world designing these man-made foods to be as tasty as possible, as palatable as possible, making each bite as satisfying as they can in order to keep us consuming even past the point of what our body needs. There are many reasons why we are currently experiencing the worst obesity epidemic that this world has ever seen. We are larger than ever, and paradoxically, we're still deficient in the nutrients and vitamins that we need to survive. What is going on here? Something is not adding up. What we can agree on is that food is powerful. Food can harm you, and food can heal you. Hippocrates was known as the father of medicine, and he lived over 2,400 years ago. Hippocrates was quoted saying, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." Yet, even after all that time, we still haven't figured it all out. Nutrition is a tough subject. For me, my journey with learning about nutrition started in college, where I learned the basics of fitness and nutrition. This was back in 2010 timeframe. Before that, food was just fuel to me. I put it in my body. It gave me energy to do the sports and the activities that I wanted to do. But then college taught me some really great foundational stuff. But college also taught me some things that are now being found to not exactly be 100% correct as they taught it to me. Although food and nutrition have been studied for centuries, and we've been eating since we've been humans, modern nutritional science is actually surprisingly young. The first vitamin isolated and chemically defined was in 1926. That was thiamine, and that was less than 100 years ago. Shortly after that, the isolation of vitamin C followed in 1932, which helped us with our problems with scurvy. And then in the 1950s and the 1970s, a focus of nutritional science was mostly on dietary fat and sugar. And then from 1970s to 1990s, attention was put on diet-related chronic diseases and supplementation. And then here we are, into the third decade of a new millennium and still arguing about random things, confusing the hell out of all of us. The science is really new and it's always changing. Just like we used to think the earth was flat and at the center of the universe, just like we used to think that we only used 10% of our brain, we are slowly and painfully finding out that we know very little. It's amazing that we have some of the smartest brains on planet Earth. People that literally know how to compute math equations that tell us how to look at black holes and wormholes and how that works in outer space. Yet we can't agree on if eggs are good or bad for you. Yet we can't agree if meat gives you cancer or not. It's almost comical to me. But it's also beyond hair-pulling frustrating for someone like me who just wants to learn and help others make good decisions that will help them live optimized lives. Why can't we agree? Well, it's because of the extreme differences in our human experience and how nutritional studies would have to be done in order to find out. It's almost an impossibility. In order for us to truly know how food is affecting a human being, we would have to completely isolate unimaginable variables. We'd have to track every metabolic process, which we don't even know much about. We would have to confine that person in a metabolic ward for essentially their entire lifetime and measure every possible biomarker. You'd have to figure out how to categorically filter out their genetic lineage, and you would have to do this with how many people? Thousands of people, tens of thousands of people? And even then, when you did all of that, we would still be taking a human out of how they live a realistic actual life in this crazy world. It just won't be done. It's too much. Maybe soon we're going to figure out a way for AI to compute something, but still, what works for the whole collective human race doesn't mean you, the individual, the unique snowflake, will fit nicely into its results. And the reason I say all of this is because one of my main pieces of advice for clients when it comes to nutrition is rule number one: do what works for you. Rule number one, do what works for you. Yes, a very generalized, not very helpful suggestion when first presented with it. I know, but it's because nutrition is so extremely individualized. There is no one diet plan that will work for everyone. Everyone's ability to digest the food and metabolize the food that they eat is different. Not only that, but the field of food science has created so many different variations of the same food that we have slowly moved away from what is real and what is a Frankenstein version of the real thing. As an example of this, when I was younger, I would go to my grandma's house in Corvallis, Oregon, where we lived out in the woods. My cousins and I, we would grab these big buckets, at least big for us, and we would go wander out into the forest and we would go collect blackberries for hours. These blackberries were so small, sometimes tart, sometimes sweet, sometimes misshapen, but always packed with flavor. Now I go to Costco and I buy blackberries that have probably been genetically modified to be 4 times the size, filled with mostly water, which dilutes the most important nutrient part of the berry, which is the skin. And now if you were to sell them in the store, they would both say blackberries on them. But the wild ones, those have seen and survived some serious stuff to get from where it started as a thorny bush to where it is in your hands. While the GMO huge, plump blackberries were probably grown inside, no stresses presented to it, sprayed with God knows what, you can't tell me that eating these 2 seemingly same berries will have the same result in your body. And that's just one example of millions, billions, maybe infinite different reasons why food and what it is going to do in your body is so challenging to understand. Another thing that I think about all the time is we now have the ability to get avocados from Central America delivered to California, to Oregon, to Washington, wherever you live. We have the ability to get tropical fruit from the Amazon rainforest. We have species and treats coming from all over the world where they have been harvested or picked, somehow probably preserved in some way, shipped on boats or trucks or planes, and then stocked and stored until one day you go to the store and you buy it. And then you consume it in your house. Up until the last few decades, we never did anything like that. We ate the food that was grown in our direct location, where we live, where the bacteria and the microorganisms that live in, on, and with us, that we cohabitate with, that we used to co-consume the food and live in the same environment together with. Now, we are putting foreign things from foreign places into our body with no idea what the long-term ramifications will be. But we are starting to get a good short-term picture of what is happening and what will happen if we continue doing what we're doing. We're over-consuming. That's not a question. We're unhealthy. Something is just not working. So what do I tell my clients when they ask me what the best diet is? What is the best diet, coach? And it's the same answer that I give for almost every other question. It depends. It depends on your goals. It depends on your past. It depends on your genetics and what your family before you were used to eating. It depends on your current lifestyle choices and your current behaviors. It depends. As I research nutrition, I hear the smartest nutrition experts in the world. I listen to them. I listen to them as they learn new things. I listen to them as they do studies. And they're over here arguing with each other. Some say that Mediterranean is the best way. Some say paleo. Some swear by vegan or vegetarian. Most of us are in the middle and say omnivore is probably the way to go. There are even some out there that say that food is unnecessary and we can get our energy in other ways. We just haven't figured it out yet because we're mere humans. Yeah, no wonder us as the average consumer are over here just scratching our heads and ending up just throwing our hands in the air and taking the cheapest, easiest option. I totally get it. One thing we can all agree on, though, expert or not, is that the diet that works best for you is as unique as your lifestyle is. I'm going to say that again. The diet that works best for you is as unique as your lifestyle. Michael Pollan is an American author and journalist who is currently the 9th professor of science and environmental journalism at the UC Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism. And he's pretty famous in the nutrition world for his 7 rules for eating. And I kind of want to share with you what these 7 rules are. I found them pretty interesting and I really like them. So Let's look at what he had to say. His rule number 1, don't eat anything your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. When you pick up a box of portable yogurt tubes or you eat something with 15 ingredients that you can't even pronounce, ask yourself, what are those things doing there? And I like this rule because he talks about your great-grandmother, and your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize the food. And this goes back to eating food that your ancestors ate, eating food that was near where you're living. So very interesting there. Number 2, don't eat anything with more than 5 ingredients or ingredients that you can't pronounce. This is becoming a more and more popular thing to think about, but it's becoming a more and more difficult thing to do because of the way that our system is set up. Number 3, stay out of the middle of the supermarket. Shop on the perimeter of the store. And this one's getting pretty popular too. Real foods tend to be on the outer edges of the store because they're near the loading docks. And that's where it can be replaced with fresh food when it goes bad. So shop around the perimeter of the store. Number 4, don't eat anything that won't eventually rot. There are exceptions, of course, like honey, but as a rule, things like Twinkies that never go bad, that's not food. Number 5, it's not just what you eat, but it's how you eat. Always leave the table a little hungry. Pollan says that many cultures have rules that you stop eating before you're full. In Japan, they say eat until you're 4/5 full. Islamic culture has a similar rule. And in German culture, they say tie off the sack before it is full. So number 5, it's not just what you eat, but how you eat. Always leave the table a little hungry. Number 6, families traditionally ate together around a table and not a TV at regular meal times. It's a good tradition. Enjoy meals with the people that you love. Remember when eating between meals felt wrong? Number 7, and this one was an eye-opener for me. I did not know this stat. Number 7, don't buy food where you buy your gasoline. In the United States, 20% of food is eaten in the car. What are you guys doing in the car? I have a rule in my car. I don't eat just because I want to keep it kind of like, I don't want the smell and I want it new. I don't know. It's like 10 years old now, but I still have that rule. You guys eat 20% of the food in your car? Oh, man. He then decided to take all of this knowledge on nutrition and concentrate it down into what is now a very widely accepted view on nutrition. He said, eat real food, mostly plants, not too much. Eat real food, mostly plants, not too much. That's pretty powerful. Short, concise, sweet. I like it. However, telling people to eat real food, not too much, is very similar to telling people, if you want to be rich, just save more than you spend. Super easy, right? No, it couldn't be more challenging. The challenge is we have a lot of things going against us, and it's even more insidious. There are money-driven agendas from every angle that are masking the solutions to educate our people and to help our people eat healthier. There are genius scientists creating foods that are extremely delicious, that are designed to never stop eating. And while I don't think it's as sinister as it sounds there, I think most people are just trying to make money and just trying to help the bottom line of their business. I think that because money is the factor here, we are losing out on a lot of really, really important health education to our people. It's pretty clear that we as the average consumer are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to the food that we consume. And there are a lot of factors as to why. We used to be able to grow our own food, right? Our grandparents' parents most likely taught them how to be self-sufficient and live off the land. As our population grew and as our city density increased, this really was not a really great option. We no longer had the knowledge or skill to be self-sufficient. Now we depend on a system to help feed us. And that system, it needed help feeding so many people, so our government stepped in, as it was intended to do, and made it cheaper for farmers to make certain foods. And it seemed to make sense at the time. It was either have starving citizens or figure out a way to get these people food. That seems logical. But now, Like 80% of our diet consists of the same 5 foods: corn, wheat, soy, rice, sugar. We didn't know what that would mean 50 years down the road. And it's obvious that we really weren't thinking that far ahead. This is Dr. Mark Hyman's wheelhouse right here. He's the host of the podcast, The Doctor's Pharmacy, with a F-A-R-M-A-C-Y. Now, some of the things that he says are controversial in the nutrition realm, and he kind of gets a little flack from some of the scientists out there, but these days, who isn't? When you have a stance, you're probably going to be controversial no matter what you say when it comes to nutrition. But he has written many books, countless books, dozens of books, a lot of them on how to go about starting to fix our system and our current nutritional issues, how to get better with those. He believes that it is going to take both a top-down and a bottom-up approach, meaning that the government will have to be in charge, of course, of helping fix what they originally broke, but us as consumers, we have to do our part as well. I'm not going to go too far into this topic because that could be a whole podcast. In fact, he has a ton that I'm going to include on this topic. Go ahead and check out, if you're interested, in the description of this episode, you'll find 3 or 4 links to some podcasts and then a bunch of his books that I'm going to link in the description. But we're going to make this a little more tangible. We're going to give you an action plan for boosting your nutrition pillar to optimal status. Here's going to be the secret sauce, your game plan that you can use to elevate your nutrition game. So here's some tips. First, add in before you subtract. Most people, when they come to me for diet help, they come to me and they are ready. They go, I'm ready to cut out all the carbs. I'm ready to cut out all the sweets. No more sugar. Absolutely zero alcohol. Let's do this thing. They're just jacked. They're pumped. But hold on. What do you think our human tendency is when we tell ourselves that we can't have something? That's right. Our inner toddler comes out, and that's all we can think about. It consumes our entire mind. And no willpower is strong enough to hold off forever. And then one day, boom, you're in a chocolate-induced coma, passed out with your hands stuffed in a jar of peanut butter with whipped cream all over your face. Yeah, been there. Your first goal is to start simple. Make it easy. Make it almost impossible not to do. Instead of telling yourself that you can't have something, your goal should be to start by slowly adding things in. For example, each morning, add in just 1 glass of water. This is what we call taking your inner shower in the morning. You take your outer shower, right? Well, take your inner shower. There are many benefits to drinking water that we've talked about before, and especially right when you wake up. This is simple. This is easy. It's pretty tough not to do, especially if you put a glass of water by your bedside table right before you go to bed. And then wake up, boom, and enjoy. Another example would be to add in an extra vegetable at every meal. As you add in a vegetable, it's likely that other food items will naturally start to get pushed out. You could also add in a 10-minute walk after each meal to help with digestion and movement. We talked about this a lot in our previous episode on pillar number 1, movement. Add in a 10-minute walk after your big meals. You could add in 1 probiotic-rich food a day. Something like kimchi or kefir, sauerkraut, low-sugar kombucha, or low-sugar yogurt. Do something to help your microbiome. Add in something that matches your health goals before you decide to take away. Next, we're going to go back to the thermic effect of food that we briefly touched on last week's episode. The thermic effect of food. If you remember, we talked about how some foods take more energy to digest than others. Well, this is a really important factor to consider when it comes to building a strong body, controlling your body composition, and combating the challenges that most of us face when it comes to over-consuming energy, calorie, foods, whatever it is that you want to say here. Over-consuming. And this is where I want to share with you my passion for one of the 3 macronutrients, and that is protein. Protein is the building block of muscle, the longevity tissue. Protein makes up all the tiny sodium-potassium pumps in all of your neurons in your central nervous system. Protein makes up the hemoglobin in your blood that transports oxygen all around your body for survival. Protein makes up the enzymes that drive the chemical reaction in every one of your 37 trillion cells in your body. Saying that protein is important is a major understatement, to say the least. Here's something really cool. It takes up a lot of our energy for your body to break down protein and to shuttle the small amino acid parts all around your body. In fact, it takes up to 20 to 30% of the calories that you eat from protein just to process it. That means that if you eat 100 calories of protein, you're really only netting about 75 calories from that food. In comparison, carbohydrates, thermic effect of food, is about 5 to 10%, nowhere close to that 20 to 30%. And fat tends to have the lowest thermic effect of food. Fat, dietary fat, not fat on your body, but fat tends to have 3 to 5%. So fat, 3 to 5, carbs, 5 to 10, and protein all the way up at 20 to 30% goes to digesting and metabolizing that food. So if your goal is simply body composition and you're looking to build strong muscles or tone muscles, as most people say, and just lose body fat, protein is a great macronutrient to leverage. I recommend eating 1 gram of protein per pound of desired body weight. So what that means is if you want to be 180 pounds, if your goal is to be 180 pounds, then your goal is to eat up to 180 grams of protein a day. And I know that sounds like a lot to try to squeeze into your day. And honestly, most people that have never tracked, when they track, they are usually getting probably like 40 to 50 grams. And they have a really hard time figuring out how to even start to shoot for their body weight in grams of protein. I see this being a challenge, especially in middle-aged to elderly females that I train, or of course, vegetarians or vegans. So start with a goal to try to just get over 100 grams of protein a day, which is still going to be tough for a lot of you. You do this by eating protein at every single meal and making sure that the first meal of your day is protein heavy and protein focused. That way you aren't scrambling at the end of your day just trying to catch up. It's not going to work that way. It is tough, but it's far from impossible. It just takes a little bit of tracking. It takes a little bit of a game plan, some trial and error, and figuring out what are the best foods that work for you in order to hit that macro goal of eventually your body weight in grams of protein. For me, my personal favorite protein foods are, of course, eggs. Whole eggs, not egg whites. Whole eggs. Eggs are nature's multivitamin. I also eat lean turkey almost every single day. But any lean meat will work as well. Chicken, fish, a good steak every once in a while is also a good treat. I also eat avocado and nuts. It's a good protein and fat combo. Just make sure that your overall portion sizes are controlled. And for me, beef jerky and cheese are my favorites. Now, dairy is a tough subject. I know you're already thinking that as soon as I say cheese, dairy is a tough subject. So many mixed messages and studies saying different things, and experts disagreeing on pretty much everything. I talked to one of our members, and I consider him a really good friend who's been over 30 years of medical experience, and he told me that he tells his patients absolutely no dairy. But personally, I drink a gallon of milk every 3 days. I eat cheese 2 to 3 times a day. I eat Greek yogurt every day, and it doesn't seem to mess with me at all. Yet, if some of my friends even look at ice cream, they're in the bathroom immediately after. So I'm still kind of figuring this one out, dairy. And rule number 1 definitely applies. Do what works for you. I enjoy it. It seems to help me get my protein in. And when I cut it out of my diet, I don't notice any difference in my health, for better or for worse. But back to protein. Protein is also the most filling macronutrient. So for those of us that struggle with cravings and tend to snack a lot because of it, protein helps keep us fuller longer, which is a beautiful thing if you're trying to cut down some of your excess energy intake. In order to get your protein intake, get it in early in the day. And if you have to supplement, a good whey protein shake is a good option, if you can handle whey, of course. You can do this in between meals and or post-workout. Yes, plant protein is an option here. I know a lot of people ask me about plant protein, but there are different types of protein, and there's complete and incomplete. This has a lot to do with the makeup of their amino acid profile, All the people that I respect and all the people that I follow agree that plant protein is inferior to animal-based protein. Does that mean animal-based protein is better? Well, for you, maybe not. There are many factors, and this could even include your morals, your preferences, your budget. You have to do what works for you, man. Figure it out. I support you either way. Just know that the facts say that animal-based protein is more of a complete protein, and you'll get a little bit more bang for your buck when it comes to that. You also have to realize in order for a plant protein to be a plant protein, it has to take thousands, like let's say a pea protein. It has to take thousands of peas and it has to condense down this material. But what happens when this happens? Well, a single pea has a small trace amount of heavy metals in it from the soil. But what happens when you take thousands of peas and you condense them down to make this plant-based protein? Now you're adding a higher concentrated level of heavy metals. There's no way before this process of making this plant-based protein, a human could eat that many peas to get that much heavy metal access. But now, because of our technology, it is a possibility. Is that healthy? I don't know. I would say I would take the thing that we've been eating for thousands of years, meat, over that, but that's just me personally. So think about that as well when you're thinking about your protein choices. All right, let's move on from the topic of protein for now. I have a whole folder on my phone with dozens and dozens of podcasts and books on the topic of protein. If you'd like me to share any with you, please send me a message and I'll send you whatever you need. Our next nutrition tip, if you're trying to lose body fat, avoid drinking your calories. Liquid calories, drinks like sodas and alcohols. Obviously, those are no-brainers. These drinks offer incredibly low nutrient value and are super easy to overconsume. Sodas have such high concentrated sugar levels that essentially it all just gets streamlined straight into your system where your body will most likely store. Alcohol is usually consumed with higher sugary drinks like juices or sodas, and we all definitely know that alcohol lowers our inhibition. And the foods that we choose, usually drunk at midnight, those foods probably wouldn't meet Michael Pollan's standards or 7 rules. Also, the next day, we usually feel like trash after drinking alcohol, which means our bad decisions are compounded through even worse food choices. Low energy and movement happens the next day. And then our poor sleep from drinking alcohol. I mean, all those things, that's like taking a wrecking ball to the majority of our total wellness pillars. In my opinion, soda should be removed from your diet, and alcohol should be reserved only for special occasions when you're filling other buckets of health, like celebrating a loved one or a significant life event. One not too obvious liquid is actually juices. I used to think that juices were your way of getting healthy fruits in. Apple juice, orange juice, grape juice, cranberry juice, all the juices. If we were to give you the whole fruit, that fruit comes with fiber, and that helps slow down the absorption of the sugar in fruit, fructose. But in juice, that fruit is concentrated, and all the fiber is removed. And that is essentially another blast of sugar straight into your system, very similar to soda. That's right. You can equate orange juice to Coca-Cola in a lot of ways. Also, those fan favorite health smoothies that you can buy at your favorite grocery store, the content of those might as well be the same thing as soda. So if you're struggling with your weight and you want to lose body fat, literally minimize your liquid calories and your alcohol and trade it in for the real whole fruit or food, and you will see a world of difference. I can guarantee it. Now, if you're looking to gain muscle mass or if you're looking to add weight, then adding in some liquid calories would be a great way to put yourself into an energy surplus, allowing your fullness levels to quickly diminish after you drink that liquid. The reasons why liquid calories are not so great for weight loss are the same reasons why they work so well for weight gain goals. Now, sugar is such a hot topic in the nutrition field, and it's really taking a beating in the media right now. And I myself have said to clients many times that sugar is killing us. Sugar is our new sitting or smoking. But is that aggressive label warranted? Maybe. But the problem isn't really sugar itself. It's the amount and the form of sugar that we're consuming. While it's no longer a question that high fructose corn syrup is killing us by generating many of the deadly chronic diseases that we see today, high fructose corn syrup, that's a no-go. That's easy. There's a little bit more shades of gray when it comes to just plain sugar. Natural sugars like honey and agave, in the right amounts, are actually a very nice treat. But that's not what the average person is consuming. It's sugar in super concentrated and high amounts, and a lot of the time in liquid form. I like to think of this as a funnel situation. Think about a funnel. You got the big end at the top and the small end at the bottom. If you were to slowly pour liquid into the large end of the funnel, it would have enough time to go through the small end just fine. But what if we were to pour all of this liquid in all at once? Too much, too fast. It would overflow out of the top of the funnel. The funnel couldn't get rid of it fast enough. And this seems to be what soda and juices and smoothies are doing with the blood sugar in our blood. So, should we demonize sugar? Possibly. If you do your best to avoid added sugars in your food, do your best to avoid sodas and juices and smoothies, especially if your goal is weight loss, and just see what that brings for you. Then maybe we don't have to demonize sugar. But if you're someone that takes advantage of the easy access to calories when it comes to these sugary liquids, then maybe we should demonize sugar. But it's also important to note that even if the food label doesn't say added sugar, or it says 0 added sugar, but then that food blends up like 10 grams of the fruit dates. Dates are loaded with natural sugars. If they put a bunch of dates in a food for the flavor and the sweetness, you're still running into the problem of that super high concentrated sugar content coming into your system all at once. So it's not just added sugar, it's a little bit deeper than that. It's all about moderation. It's about understanding what's in the food and if that content, if it matches your goals. This requires a little extra consideration on the consumer's end of things for sure. And that's what being the CEO of your own health is all about. Educating yourself, understanding the concept, and then making a decision based on your own education. Now, a new field of study that is absolutely blowing up right now that I briefly want to discuss is the microbiome. Research shows that the gut microbiome affects a lot of how we experience our daily lives, and this includes our emotions. That's right, our microbiome affects our emotions, weight management, our brain functioning, and especially our food choices. The gut microbiome is a collection of trillions of microbes that live in and on us. These microscopic organisms, bacteria, fungi, viruses, they live everywhere, including your digestive tract, mostly in your large intestine. Digestion is your body taking raw material, food, and turning it into something it can use. Digestion makes glucose, which runs your brain and your muscles. Your digestive system is a factory for turning food into fuel, and its microbes are your factory workers. And one of the best ways to build a healthy microbiome is through diet and the food that you eat. There are immeasurable other factors that influence your gut microbiome: where you live, sleep, exercise, stress levels, even who you live with. But what your body makes and what kind of microbes your gut has depends a lot on the food that you eat. You can actually change your microbiome and potentially your daily experiences and long-term health through food fairly quickly. Dietary fiber from foods like fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, legumes and whole grains. This is the best fuel for gut bacteria. Studies have shown that low fiber, more processed foods, similar to what we eat here in the United States, called the Standard American Diet, SAD, S-A-D, all that kind of high processed, low fiber foods means less fuel for our gut bacteria, essentially starving them off until they die. Now, there are also ways that you can prepare your food that can introduce good bacteria into your gut. This is also called probiotics. Fermented foods can do this. Foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, tempeh, even low sugar kombucha and Greek yogurt provide variety and vitality to our diets. Yogurt is another fermented food that can help introduce helpful bacteria into our guts, but not all yogurt. Beware the brands that add a ton of added sugar. However, like I said, this is a brand new field of study. We still need lots of research to be done in order for us to really know what's going on here. Researchers at the American Gut Project found that people who ate more than 30 different plant foods each week had a more diverse gut microbiome compared to those who ate 10 or fewer. Now, when stated like that, it seems like kind of a no-brainer, but the research also showed that people who hit the 30 plant per week mark had more bacteria that produce something called short-chain fatty acids. And these fatty acids have been shown to reduce your risk of bowel cancer and other types of cancer. So think about this. This is going to be a fun game that you could play with your family. Maybe when you guys go to the store, maybe you find at least one exotic plant that you haven't tried before. Maybe you let your kids or your spouse or whoever's turn it is get a chance to pick the new plant of the shopping trip. Or maybe if you're weird like me, you can keep a spreadsheet or a running list and say, okay, this week I ate this many different plants. Now I'm going to try to beat it by one or something like that. Maybe you can gamify it. Maybe as your household, you guys could search cool new recipes to prepare together with your weird new cool plants. Diversity seems to be a really good thing here. The more, the better. And if you can hit 30 different plants each week, you are killing it. I am nowhere close right now, but that's going to be something that I'm working up towards. Give it a shot. No matter what eating habits that you prescribe to, it seems very clear that a diet of ultra-processed foods leads to chronic disease. It leads to weight management troubles, and it just leads to sickness. Whole natural foods that came from the earth, those type of foods are hard to overeat. And they offer us the micronutrients and the vitamins that we need to perform optimally, that nature already programmed and designed for thousands of years. Studies show that processed foods are more easily digested, which means that we are getting more of the calories and faster, but less nutrients, which is why a lot of processed foods like cereals and breads, they have to be fortified. Other studies show that those who eat a highly processed diet end up eating about 500 calories more a day, just because of the processed food making them more hungry, which adds up very quickly over the months and years. It's simple, but it's not easy. Eat whole natural foods that came from the earth with minimal ingredients that you can pronounce. Minimize foods that come from boxes, bags, and that have barcodes. And prioritize protein and fiber along with a healthy mix of vegetables and fruits. This brings us to another topic. Highly ultra-processed foods like Twinkies or those cereals that we ate as kids, or any food that you look at and you have no idea what the real food was, where they came from, those foods tend to lead to inflammation in the body. Inflammation has become a big buzzword, which is thrown around. From what I've seen, it's usually used to scare someone into buying something, whether it be a supplement or a product or some sort of program. But having said that, if you're interested in health and wellness, I have to imagine you are because you're listening to this podcast right now. But if you're interested in health and wellness, I definitely recommend a great expert to follow is Dr. Stephen Cabral. Stephen is Stephen, and Cabral is Cabral. He wrote a great book called The Rain Barrel Effect, and he talks about this constant barrage that we're under attack each day when it comes to environmental toxins and chemical buildups. And he also has a really long time running podcast with, I think, like over 3,000 episodes. It's crazy. All these are very informative on pretty much any topic you could think of. But he did a great episode on foods to include in your diet to help with our highly inflammatory lifestyles and diet. So I want to share with you some highlights on an episode that he did on the top 10 anti-inflammatory foods that you can eat to help with an inflammatory diet that most of us have. This was episode number 2454 on his podcast, which I'll include the link in the description of this episode. But let's go over his top 10 anti-inflammatory foods. Number 1, berries. Blueberries and cherries in specific. Berries with the thickest skin or most amount of skin per berry are going to offer the highest antioxidants. Big, juicy berries that were probably modified genetically are mostly water. But the small berries, like wild blueberries, that are mostly skin, are what you're looking for here. Also, wild berries are growing wild in nature. When a plant has to live in the wild, surviving all the elements, they are generating more antioxidants in order to survive that atmosphere. They receive far more natural sunlight as well, which they use with photosynthesis, than we as humans. We get to eat those berries and we get to receive all of the antioxidants, all of the phytonutrients that these wild berries were forced to produce to survive their wild environment. Blueberries have also been shown in studies to surprisingly lower blood sugar when consumed with meals or smoothies. I found that super interesting. Blueberries have been shown to lower blood sugar when consuming with meals or smoothies. Super interesting. One important note on berries is it is highly recommended to wash your berries thoroughly, especially strawberries and cherries. Strawberries and cherries are actually on the dirty dozen list because they are usually the most sprayed with pesticides, and it's right there on the skin that you eat. Fruits like pineapples and avocados that have a hard, thick skin that you don't eat, those you don't really have to buy organic. You can just buy them normal and then wash them. But berries, definitely, whether it's organic or not, it's important to wash them. So number 1 is berries. Number 2, wild caught fatty fish. Now, it's totally fine with me if you're a carnivore or a vegetarian or a vegan. I'm all for whatever you want to do. Whatever dietary guidelines you live by is totally fine with me, but especially if your goal is health. Fatty fish, wild-caught fatty fish is so good for you and helping with inflammation. Everything that I've read and heard and researched, people do seem to be even healthier if they can add a little bit of fatty fish into their diet. Now, if you don't eat animals for environmental reasons or for morality reasons, I totally support you. Do your thing. But we've all heard that you want to avoid fish with high mercury levels. And that's usually the larger fish, higher up on the food chain, that have had time to eat these smaller fish and accumulate the mercury. But fatty fish like sardines, anchovies, mackerel, salmon, these will provide you with a high level of anti-inflammatory omega-3s, given that they are wild caught and not farm raised. Oh man, I want you to check this out, and you're probably going to be pissed at me for telling you this, but I just watched a video on farm raised fish, and I'll never be the same after watching it. In this video, what they did is they caged off a small part of the ocean, so think kind of like a factory cow farming, only with fish. And then above this small part of the ocean that they caged off, they put a chicken coop over it. And these chickens would eat their food, and what would happen? They would poop, and it would drop into the ocean, and these fish, of course, would gobble up this chicken poop as their food. I'm scarred for life. So then we come along and we eat these delicious chicken poop created fish. I don't know, man, that just rubs me the wrong way. I don't think I'm ever going to eat farm-raised fish ever again on purpose. We, at our household, we get our fish from ButcherBox. This is a company that delivers high-quality meat to your door. We've used ButcherBox for years, and I recommend it to all of our friends and family. Lots of good quality fatty fish options to choose from. If you're looking for a fresh meat resource, of course, yeah, we highly recommend ButcherBox. One thing to know is that even if you are plant-based, our standard American diet is so super high in omega-6s. And in order for optimal health, you need to even out the ratio with omega-3s. A high ratio of omega-6 to 3 is a recipe for bad health. And one of the best ways to even out that ratio is to include fatty fish into your diet. Yes, you can do it with plant-based sources like flax and chia seeds. Yes, you can do it with supplementation, but they're just not as easily absorbed by the body. The amount of flax or chia seeds you'd have to eat in order for it to really create a dent in this omega-6 and 3 issue seems to add another negative health issue. So, number 2, wild fatty fish if you can. Number 3, cruciferous vegetables. Now, this is one that I personally am not a fan of. It makes me feel like I'm eating rabbit food when I eat this kind of food, but the experts all agree, and the research shows cruciferous vegetables are an important health food to add into your diet for many reasons, including regulating inflammation. Broccoli is one of the best sources here. Some people that I know absolutely love broccoli and could eat it at every meal. I am not one of those people. But there are many ways to cook broccoli that actually makes it tolerable, I guess I would use as the word, coming from experience. Broccoli contains sulforaphane, which helps with detoxification and is anti-inflammatory. Other cruciferous veggies include Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, bok choy, kale. I mean, you could just Google cruciferous vegetables and you'll get a ton. Try to get in at least a couple of cups of these vegetables every single day. Number 4, olives or cold-pressed, single-sourced, organic olive oil. Olive oil, yes, you have to get dark glass bottles. That's mandatory. Single-sourced, cold-pressed, and it has to be organic. Olive oil is pretty much all around agreed upon the best oil that you can include in your diet. Out of all the oils, the research on it is eye-opening. Even for cooking, it's great. It does better than saturated fats, better than avocado oil. It's been shown to fight against growing cancer cells. It's super anti-inflammatory. And it's a staple food in most of the blue zone cultures where people live to over 100 years of age in higher concentrations compared to the rest of the world. So olive oil, they're doing something right. I don't know. And it's kind of delicious. Number 5, avocado. If you're on a lower carb diet and you're getting more of your calories from fat, avocados and organic, cold, or fresh pressed avocado oil is an amazing anti-inflammatory food source. It's loaded with antioxidants, so look for the avocados. Number 6, nuts, walnuts, almonds, macadamia. These are all great to add into your diet. And you don't need much, just a couple of tablespoons a day, which if you like nuts, a couple tablespoons is like nothing. Dr. Cabral, he recommends throwing your nuts into a salad or maybe like a shake to add some healthy fats into your food. Not only will you get the anti-inflammatory effects, but you'll also get magnesium, which is a great thing because most of us are deficient in magnesium. Walnuts are high in omega-3s. It's important to note that nuts are very nutrient and calorie dense, so even if you need omega-3s, even if you need protein, even if you need fats, you have to really think about the calorie content. So if you struggle with over-consuming food, if you're gaining weight and you currently don't want to, if you're overweight, trying to lose weight, if you get distracted eating snack foods like nuts easily and a couple of tablespoons could turn into a couple of handfuls, then you might want to be a little more careful with actually measuring out your servings and holding yourself accountable to not overindulging on these delicious snacks. Now, I'm actually looking to increase my calorie intake, so I eat probably more of these than any other human that I've ever met. I'm a huge fan of the Costco mixed nuts and cashews. I eat almonds and pistachios every night. I eat cashews every lunch. I eat a few Brazil nuts every day for the selenium content and the anti-inflammatory effects. Walnuts for brain health. Yeah, I eat a lot of nuts. And I've always eaten sunflower seeds on my beach walk, so I'm eating sunflower seeds all the time as well. Number 7 on this list of 10 is tomatoes. Next up on Dr. Cabral's list is tomatoes. And this one, I actually refuse to put into my diet. I just don't like them. One time I was on vacation and I had this like seafood cocktail that had a tomato base and it gave me food poisoning. And now that's all I associate tomatoes with. So you'll never catch me eating a tomato unless maybe it's from my dad's garden and he insists that I try it. But having said that, heirloom tomatoes are the recommended strand to eat. Heirloom tomatoes are those smaller ones that are usually like yellow and red or purple and red. They aren't usually the ones that you think of that are bright red at your local grocery store. You want the ones that have lived a tough life out there in the wilderness. Again, just like the berries. We can benefit from the stresses, the resilience that these plants have experienced by consuming them. You are what you eat kind of thing right here. Some of the best ones are warped and misshapen, and you can tell that they've gone through the ringer. Tomatoes are a nightshade, so you also have to consider how your body digests and handles that type of food. Rule number 1 still applies here. You have to do what works for you. And remember, just because a food is on the top 10 list of anti-inflammation benefits doesn't mean it's a food that you have to eat. Moving on to number 8, another nightshade that made the list is number 8, peppers. I love peppers. I love spicy food. I love hot sauces. The spicier, the better for me. I'm not sure if that's super healthy in the long term, but it makes me happy. So sometimes you got to weigh those benefits as well. Now, peppers doesn't have to mean the spicy kind. You can get bell peppers, which are amazing to add to dishes. It gives them great color. It gives them great taste and texture. And of course, the health benefits. Dr. Cabral says that red, yellow, and orange, those are the best. And he tells people to usually shy away from the green ones only because they're higher in lectin content, which some people like Dr. Stephen Gundry, they argue that plants are defending themselves. This is a way of defending themselves, and lectins are pretty harmful for humans. But green ones are also just not as ripe. So I don't know, if you love green peppers, do your thing. But Dr. Cabral says red, yellow, and orange are the best. Number 9, green leafy vegetables. So if you look down this list so far, most of the stuff that we've talked about, besides the nuts, of course, have been super low calorie. Berries, tomatoes, cruciferous veggies, and now green leafy vegetables. So even if you are on a low carbohydrate diet, you can still add in any of these on this list and still be fine. With cruciferous veggies and tougher green leafy vegetables, such as Swiss chard or kale, well, these tougher types of greens, you're going to get more benefit by cooking those greens. They're better for your thyroid when cooked, and they're more easily digested. But some greens you can totally eat raw and are great to eat raw because you'll get the natural enzymes from that plant. So raw plants like Bibb lettuce, romaine lettuce, spinach lettuce, spring mix, all of those things are great to eat raw. Just wash them thoroughly before consuming. And the last one, number 10, my favorite on the list, dark chocolate. And this can go either way, of course, right? If you get the super low quality dark chocolate and you look at the back and you can see all sorts of stuff added to it, like chocolate liqueur and this type of syrup and that type of added sugar, all that stuff could be pro-inflammatory. But if you get minimum 70% cacao with pure natural ingredients, all found in nature, this could be quite anti-inflammatory. For me, I eat mine after dinner with berries as a nice little treat while I'm winding down from the night. Now, Dr. Cabral, he actually recommends not eating your dark chocolate at night because it does have a small amount of caffeine in it. Personally, my caffeine tolerance is pretty good, which might not be a good thing, but my Oura Ring sleep data doesn't show any difference in my sleep quality when I do or do not eat dark chocolate. So I'm going to continue eating it at night because it brings me joy. YOLO. I actually eat 95% cacao chocolate from a company called Lindt, Lindt. I buy like a box of 20 bars and I keep it in the freezer and I eat a couple of squares each night. I tried to share the 95% cacao with a friend and they said it was like cooking chocolate. I don't know what that meant, but it kind of hurt my feelings. I guess it's just an acquired taste, kind of like coffee or wine. But anyway, dark chocolate, number 10, topping off the list. That is Dr. Stephen Cabral's top 10 anti-inflammatory foods from his podcast, The Cabral Concept. Now, I want to start to conclude this episode with one last tip that we all, and at least here in the fast-paced United States culture, that we all could benefit to do a little bit more of. Let me frame it first. There's a lot of crazy things we can do when it comes to boosting our nutrition pillar. Sure, you could go super hardcore like I do and put a continuous glucose monitor in your skin for months out of the year and try to see how the food that you eat and your stresses in your life and your lifestyle behaviors, how all of that stuff affects your blood sugar inside your body. And then you can slowly try to put this incredibly challenging, complicated puzzle together for what works for yourself. Try to meticulously, through trial and error tracking, figure out what works. That would be incredible if you did that, especially if you're really as interested in learning about yourself as I am and myself. But most of us just want to do our best without being too out there and too anal about what we're doing. And honestly, I support that so much because I feel that same way about a lot of other topics. But we don't appreciate food like we should. Remember, all the way back at the beginning of this episode, the first thing that we said, we talked about taking stuff from the outside world and putting it inside of us, and that stuff then literally becomes us. That is so intimate. That is so magical. There is something about that experience that we all take for granted every day and really don't appreciate the magnitude of what that means. I watch my friends. They will buy these and own these expensive sports cars, and they will take such good care of this car and put only the best gas in it. They stress and are so strict on what goes in this vehicle, this man-made piece of metal. And then they'd use that vehicle to drive to a fast food restaurant where they stuff trash inside of their own body, their own temple, without even a second thought. Just take a step back and consider how insane that is. And I'm not excluded from this conversation at all. I am not some sort of person looking down at people chastising. I drink alcohol, literal poison, many times a month to a point of excess that would kill a small rodent. I'm over here just trying to do my best like everyone else. I definitely am not saying that I am infallible in any way here. I am just as poor at appreciating exactly what consuming and absorbing and metabolizing my food is as almost everyone else. My normal eating ritual consists of me flying around all day, training members and training clients and coaches, and quickly going home and slamming a meal, still standing up as fast as I can so that I can move on to the next thing on my to-do list. And in my race to be as efficient as possible, to get as much as possible done in the day, I treat eating like I used to treat sleeping. It's a necessity, but also kind of a chore that I need to get done quickly so I can do the other things that I need to do. So having framed it that way, I want to challenge you, while I also challenge myself and work on this myself. While you're working on finding out what is the best diet that works for you, that matches your health goals, that allows you to have the balance that you want with your personal and social life, that you look forward to, the diet that you value, that fits with the individual that you want to be long term. While you're working on all of that, which may be a lifelong effort, I want you to start taking a little more time to really value the process of eating as much as you can before you eat anything. Let's do this together. Let's stop and take a few moments to do just a couple of things. All of these major religions have been around for centuries, and all the ones that I've heard about have some sort of practice of grace before they consume a meal. They take time to slow down and pause. They express gratitude for the meal that they're about to enjoy, and they become present in the moment. Now, whether you're religious or not, there has to be something to this. If it's lasted this long, and if all these different religions can at least agree on that. Distracted eating is one of our biggest problems in the nutrition field. We distract ourselves by eating in the car. You guys eat in the car? Eating in front of screens and eating on the go. We distract ourselves from realizing we are eating Frankenstein fake food. And our bodies and brains have not had time to evolve from how we used to eat just a few generations ago. Research shows that deep breathing exercises can help reduce stress in your gut and improve the digestion of the food that you eat just by doing some deep breaths before you eat. So our challenge, no distracted eating. When you eat, be present. Notice that you're taking a bite of what you're taking a bite of, how it feels in your mouth. Notice that you're chewing it, that you're getting the right consistency before you swallow, that you're not just shoveling in the next spoonful before you've even eaten what's in your mouth. If you struggle with food intake in any way, make this a goal of yours. Obviously, none of us are going to be perfect, but 80% of the time, maybe, be present with your food. Let's take 3 or more deep breaths. 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Count them out 3 times, 3 rounds, while appreciating and just thinking about, where did this food come from? Was it an animal or a plant that gave its life? What kind of people or processes or systems must have happened in order for this food to be right in front of you on your plate today? Where did it have to come from? How did it get to you? Express gratitude for those animals or plants or people that worked hard and gave what they did in order for you to be sustained in this moment. After a quick few breaths and a quick few thoughts, then dive in, enjoy, be present. Also consider that the digestion process doesn't start when the food hits your mouth. It starts much earlier than that. It starts when you think about the food that you're about to eat, and your brain starts to prepare your body to digest that food. It starts when you smell the food, and your olfactory nerves start a release and a cascade of digestive enzymes and processes even before your fork touches that food item. If you have a food that is good for you, take your time to chew that food well. Help your body absorb it better by mechanically breaking it down so that those digestive enzymes and acids don't have to work extra hard. Tell your body that this is a nourishing food and it's going to nourish you in the ways that you need toward your health goals. Say that in your brain. Be happy that you're consuming it. Enjoy it. Put that thought in your head as you're eating it. And on the flip side, if you're eating food that might not match your health goals, please don't beat yourself up over it. You're literally compounding negative with negative. Your brain is so powerful. And stressing about the food that you're eating is only going to compound the negative results. And this is not some woo-woo hippy-dippy stuff. That's literally confirmed science. Your thoughts create literal change in your body. Support your adult decision. Live with the consequences of your decision. And then later, tip the scales in the direction of your health goals the best you can. No one is perfect, nor should we be. This is part of our human experience, guys. We sometimes do things in life not for the ultimate health span, but for some of the truly wonderful human experiences that we can participate in during our journey here. Rule number 1, do what works for you. Do the best you can when you can. And try not to be so hard on yourself when you do things that don't work the way that you wanted them to. I didn't really mean for this to end on such a philosophical note. I do hope that some of these tips and strategies can help you along your journey. They sure have helped me, even in this frustrating landscape. But stay tuned for next week when we move on to the next pillar of our total wellness, stress management. Please let me know what topics on nutrition that we didn't cover today, because there's a lot. What may have we missed? What has helped you in your life? Or maybe some new research that has come out that would help the Live in the Dream team. I'd love to hear from you. You can find our contact information in the description of this episode. And one final recommendation before we end. There is an amazing book by Shawn Stevenson called Eat Smarter. Eat Smarter. This is a must read for all of us. I'm not excluding anyone. I literally bought dozens of books and gave them to our members at Eat the Frog Fitness because I found it so impactful and so helpful. And it took such a complex subject and really simplified it down so that we can all start making actionable changes in our life. So please take the time to invest in reading this book, Eat Smarter by Shawn Stevenson. You won't regret it. And that's it, my friends, for this week's episode. Each week, we will focus on sharing information that will help you with your health, fitness, and wellness journey. Share the knowledge that you gained today with your friends and family, and hold each other accountable. If you enjoyed this content, it helps a ton. If you could please post on your social media stories a screenshot of this episode with one takeaway that you learned, and don't forget to tag me and share your journey. Tag me at liveinthedream_podcast or at Coach Damien_SD, and let us know how this episode benefited you. Let's get more people on this lifelong learner train and join the Livin the Dream team. Message us if you have any suggestions or tips that will help your Livin the Dream team that we can discuss on future episodes. I will be right here with you, working on making us stronger, happier, and healthier humans. Until next time, friends, keep living the dream.